Are you there? Okay. All right. So I guess we'll get going. So today we're going to be talking a little bit more about loans, specifically. So everything that you need, everything that we've done so far, everything that needs to be done on loans, there's a video up about it. Okay. So the purpose of today is to kind of talk through a couple of different scenarios, and just so that I wanted you to see big picture, because so oftentimes, especially in a math class, you get stuck on this is how I do things, not the why we do things. And so that's kind of the purpose of, since we're online here, it's, if we were in class, what I would do is we'd do some stuff, then we'd do some, do some example problems. You guys would work them in on the computers. I could walk around the room. Somebody would ask an interesting question. A lot of them are the same every time. Like somebody will do the same thing that someone did last term, but sometimes people get some really cool ideas and stuff. And it's that's kind of fun. That's why I enjoy being in the classroom part of it. But what I like to do now that we're kind of, apart or whatever, is think about it in terms more of, making sure you understand the concept of why we're doing it, as opposed to the just so much the how-tos. So what I want to talk about today a little bit more is the basically two real premises where you would have where you would be using this sort of thing. And so that's kind of I just want to talk through them a little bit, and then we're going to talk a little bit about excuse me. We're going to talk a little bit today about the financial project, which is not starting anytime real soon. I think it comes live this next week to where you can start working on it. But it's out of ways, the deadline is, because I want you to work on it and really understand what you're doing and, really learn something from it, not just, okay, I got the assignment done. Okay, that's not really the whole point. So in my mind, there's really two scenarios that you're ever going to look at. Okay. One is, I want to buy this. What will the monthly payment be? And of course, it's 99.9% of the time for consumer people, it'll be monthly payment, whether it's car or house, whatever it is. When I used to farm, if you took out a loan, you would do one big yearly payment because we didn't get paid every month. So it would be at the end of the year, you're responsible for this ginormous payment, which is why we didn't buy a lot of brand new equipment. Any brand new equipment, because that idea that you'd have to make some ginormous $40,000 payment at the end of the year or whatever. Yeah, it's scary. And so we would end up using older stuff and just deal with it that way. Okay. That's one scenario. The other scenario is this: I can afford this much monthly. Big monthly payment. How much house can I afford, or how much can I spend? Those are the two biggies. Okay. And so I think I want to start with number two first. I think that to me is the more logical way to start. We went to look at our first house years and years ago. Well, we started looking at houses. Hey, this house looks really cool. So we go and then you try it, and then you figure out the price of that thing is, whatever it was, way beyond our means. And I'm like, so after about the third time of that, me crying when we got back because I couldn't afford it or whatever. I sat down and finally figured out one day, listen, this is with this monthly payment, this is our maximum amount of money that we can afford. So quit looking at houses over that price limit, and then you won't have to feel bad about yourself or whatever, right? So whenever you go buy stuff, and I think I'm talking amongst people who have bought a lot of stuff, typically when you buy something on the loan, obviously you're going to put a down payment down. And if you haven't done that, and I know there's a few people in the class that are right out of high school, but I've never seen that. The down payment is money that you have saved, money that you have, and you pay up front, and then you borrow the rest of the price of the house or car. Rest of the price of the house or car or horse or whatever it is you're buying. I don't know. Okay. So the game is this: purchase price of the home, whatever you agreed to purchase it for, is equal to the down payment plus the amount borrowed. and a little bit of algebra, which is why this comes after math 65. If you want to know how much you have to borrow, obviously you just subtract this to this side over here, and then that'll be the amount you have to borrow, obviously. Okay. A couple things. This right here, the amount that I'm borrowing is going to be my present value every time. Okay, that's what my loan started with. In a loan, every single time, the future value is going to be 0. That's the whole point. At some point, you will have paid it off. Okay. Clearly, the rate you don't get to choose. The bank tells you what the rate is. Okay, so you don't get to choose that. Time, typically, yeah, you know, quote unquote, get to choose it. But let's be honest, it's usually 30 years on a loan. 30 years is, of course, we're going to use 360 months. All right, it could be 180 years, 180 months, which is 15 years. Let's say you're buying a car for a 5-year loan, then it'd be 60 months. It's the same principle, just a different number of months. Okay, but these, this guy, this guy, this guy, and then of course your payment, this monthly payment, that's, you know what you can afford to pay. Okay, if you know that you can afford to pay $1,200 a month, then that, by God, is what your maximum payment could be. And then you're going to solve, and we're going to use the PV function to find how much I can afford to borrow. And then once I know this, I just add whatever down payment I have, and voila, that's how much house I can afford to buy. It's really quite easy to do that way. Okay. And so keep this in mind. You've been saving money up, you've been saving money up, you've been saving money up. You know how much down payment you have. You know this because maybe that's going to be your rent or whatever. That's basically what you have. You're spending on rent nowadays. Maybe you're renting for $1,000, but maybe you think you can afford $1,200 total a month. Okay, cool. This is going to be 0 every time. This is going to be probably 360. And then the bank tells you what you can get. You can go to a different bank and might do a skosh better. But in reality, the market, they're pretty much all the same. So I mean, within a few points of each other or whatever. Oh, I got a 4.2 over here. I got a 4.3 over, well, whatever. They're all, the gist of it's the same. It's not like you're going to get 8% over here and you're going to get 2% over here. They're all in the same ballpark. Obviously, you decide what bank you want to use, and then they'll tell you what interest rates you can get. Okay. So let's just do one of these guys. Let's say you have 30,000 saved for a down payment. Okay. And you can afford, let's say, $1,200 a month. This is what you feel like you can afford to pay. And it's going to be 30 years. And you got a 4.3% interest rate. Cool for you. So what's missing here, of course, is, let's see here. We've got, now this one doesn't count. I mean, we need it, but it doesn't count. Remember, we need future value. Future value is 0. Here's my rate. Here's my NPER. And of course, this is my PMT. What's missing here is present value, and that's the function that we're going to end up using on this guy. So the question really is, how much house can you afford? Okay, that's really the question. And so if you go into Excel, the way I typically would set this up, we're a little laggy on the computer, I see there. The way I would typically set this up is I'd go over here, like I do, like a, oh, like a keyboard would work. Okay, now you're going to work. Okay, great. So I go over here somewhere and I put in my interest rate, 0.043. And again, if I'm using Excel, I'm going to name it. If I'm using Google Sheets, I'm just going to do what you've been doing in that process with the dollar signs like I showed you. And then here, 1,200. And I'm going to call that payment 4 there because, again, I'm on sheet 4 for whatever reason. So equals, and then I'm going to do PV function here. So it's the rate divided by 12. How many months? Well, 360 months. By the way, you can do this if you don't know how many months that is. You can just go 30 times 12, and Betsy will take care of the math for you. Payment is going to be this guy here, but I'm going to put negative this payment. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want it to be a positive value that I get for present value. Otherwise, if you don't, it'll come out to be a negative value, which is fine. I mean, it's like it's showing that you're in the hole. But the way I like to do I like to structure it so that in my mind, I got this giant pile of debt and I'm dropping it down. You could think of it as a hole and you're filling it up. It's the same principle. But that's how I want to do it. And then notice that future value is grayed out right there. And that's because it's assumed to be 0. So right here, this is telling me that I can borrow $242,000. Okay. Now, before I go any further, I'm just going to go ahead and set up this formula like I do every time. If you watch the videos, you see me do it a million times. Oops, 1 plus interest divided by 12. And the reason I like to do this is because I like to double check myself, right? I want this thing when I'm finished at 361, it better be 0. Okay. And again, if you put that in the $sign notation, again, this is nothing new. It's the why am I doing this that we're really focusing on today, or for this part of it. And then we're going to do some different in a little bit. So here we go. Oh, nice. So it checks out. 0 is my answer, or 0 is the future value. So that means I did it right. So how much house can I afford? I can afford this much plus the 30 grand that I had for a down payment. So I can afford $272,000 is what I'm saying I can afford here. Done. Okay. So I can go find a house for this price. Now, that is the maximum amount of house I can theoretically afford. If I buy a house for $272,487.22, it will cost me exactly $1,200 a month. If I bought one for $200,000, I can clearly afford it. Yes, clearly, because it's less than this. This is the maximum I can afford. It's like saying you have 20 bucks in your pocket. You go to Taco Bell. Can you buy a burrito? Yeah. Can you buy 2 of them? Yes. At some point, you will not be able to buy anymore because you'll be over your spending amount limit, which I guess is 20 bucks. That's all you got. So this is the most I got. But if I buy a house for $200,000, that means that my monthly payment would not be as high as $1,200. Obviously, I might only have to pay $1,000 a month for that house. Okay, so just be aware that a lot of people get complacent, especially on their financial math worksheet or my financial project that I'm going to have you do, and they'll screw it up because they don't think about the fact that, hey, if I make this guy right here, let's just try this. See, I found this cool house and it only costs $200,000. That's nice. Now, if I scroll down, look what happened. Whoa, what happened? Well, somewhere up here, you see I paid it off. That's because I was paying more than I needed to pay every month. I was paying, $1,200 when in fact I might have only needed to pay, as I say, $1,000. Now, that's a good problem to have, by the way. It's a very good problem to have because what you could do is, I'll grab your question here in a second. See, it only cost me $989 for this house, but I was paying $1,200, which means I was paying, which means I was paying an extra $200 a month. That's why I paid it off early. You with me? And so that's good. And if you could afford $1,200, I highly recommend that you do pay $1,200 a month because you will save money in the long run. Okay. What was the question here? Chat. Into the principal. So the 200 is going to principal. Yeah, correct. So that extra, whatever's above and beyond this 989 goes toward paying down what you owe. Exactly right. Exactly right. So I'm going to undo these guys for a second. Undo, Control Z, undo, undo, undo. There we go. Cool. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing on this computer and use the other one. It's, I think, nicer. So we will be using, I'm going to use Zillow. I don't care what you use. If you want to use realtor.com, Redfin, or any of the other ones, knock yourself out. I just don't personally care one way or the other. I learned on Zillow. So I learned on Zillow. And so as a result, this is the one that I know how to run properly. Now, I'm going to use St. Helens, I guess. Actually, I'm going to use Walla Walla. That sounds fun. Let's do Walla Walla, Washington. Nice. And what I'm going to do is under price over here. I'm just going to go in there and I'm going to put in 272 as my maximum price. Obviously, in a buyer's market, you could probably buy something for 290 but talk them down to 270 or something. Kind of more of a seller's market, it seems like these days, but whatever. Okay. And Oh, I would say this is that on this project, I want you to make sure that you're using not properties. Don't get into, we'll talk a little bit more about it in a little bit, but don't get by a lot, and don't buy this trailer house in a trailer park. Don't do that. So let's stay on stuff that's just normal single family homes. Um, I don't want anything in a, we're going to stay out of housing authorities as well. Oh, this place here is nice. Sure. Here we go. Beautiful. 219. Okay. Now, clearly this is less than the total amount of money I have. So we should be golden here. All right. But maybe I'm a snob and I don't want to spend that. I want to spend a little closer to my maximum about, oh, what just happened? What just happened? Go back, go back, go back, go back. Price. There you go. So I feel like that's just too far down. I mean, I want to factor out those cheesy little mobile homes and stuff. So I go to 250 to 272. Oh yeah, that's what now we're talking. See, much better, much better. And Pleasant's a pleasant street, anyways. By the way, so it's beautiful. This is right at the top of my amount of money I can afford. Now, I will say this for my project. I'm going to give you. Please don't go through here and go like either A, fall in love with this parquet floor. Isn't this wonderful? No, you're not buying a house, okay? Number one, and number two, don't go. Oh, I can't stand this place because you're not buying it, okay? Now, over here under price and tax history, if you scroll down a ways, you will see this is the property taxes for the year. Okay. So what I want to do on this problem is I'm going to jot that down 2653 and put it in my other computer. I'm going to go back to the other computer for the Excel so I can have oh shoot, maybe I am. So that I can so that you can follow along. Oh, Danielle's here. Good. All right. And so this house, by the way, oops, share. So this house we just found was $269,000. I think. I don't remember the exact price. Not that big a deal. It's close enough for what we're doing here. I want to prove a point. Clearly, this is less than this. Yes? Sweet. So in reality, what we're going to have to do then is say, well, I really need to find is what's my new payment. So what I'm going to do is come over here, and I'm going to put in that 269. So how much would I be borrowing? Okay. So this is the purchase price. That means I'm going to end up borrowing 30,000 less than that. Oops. 30,000 less than that because I'm going to pay 30,000 of my money up front. That's what I had saved up for the down payment. And then I'm going to borrow the rest of it, which in this case is $239,000. Okay. Now, what I don't know is I don't know what the payment is. So over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to equals payment. And I'm going to use that same interest rate that we already have because I didn't change the interest, comma 360, comma negative, and this time it's E1. And so 1182. Oh, you can't do spaces, you ding dong. 4-ish. Okay, whatever, I don't care. Now, when I do this, you're like, oh, I can totally afford this, Jay. It's $18 less than my maximum. Not so fast, friend. Not so fast. Because we have $2,654, I think it was, per year in taxes that we must pay. Well, that's a lot. Well, whatever. But notice that is going to be $221 a month that we have to come up with. $221 per month that we need to talk about. So if we think about that, like, where's that money going to come from? Well, I don't know about you, but most of my money that I tie up for housing is $1,200. That's all of the housing. I don't have an extra kitty just for property taxes, okay? This $1,200 a month needs to cover all of my housing. Well, oh, crap. That means I really only have available, if I buy a house like this in Walla Walla, I really only have somewhere in the neighborhood of $980 available to buy a house with. Does that make sense? Because I'm spending $200 a month on property taxes. The rest of it then is the rest of my $1,200 I have available to be put towards actually purchasing the home. okay? And what I want you to do on Zillow this term is when you're working on your project, I want you to constantly be thinking about that so that when you're doing this, just kind of keep that in mind. Now, if you already own a home, you know that, but this is a surprise to a lot of people, or they don't think about it a lot, is the idea of how much that property tax boils down to every month, okay? Now, I've been on Walla Walla as assessors, but we'll try it. County assessor, tax, come on, tax, records, nice. Here we go, property search. Now, this comes as a shock to a lot of people, and I think it's hilarious when people do this. They get all, they get weirded out a little bit that that it's public knowledge that you own this house or that house. It cracks me up. Same people that give their stuff out to whoever, and it's funny that they care about that, but whatever. This is public knowledge. You're welcome to look at for anybody, and here it is, and there it is right there, and then you can actually view the details. I like their site. Their site's pretty nice. Okay, and then yep, there's the statement, and down here is what it's all going for. So in Walla Walla, this is how it's broken out. Oh, darn it. This is how it's broken out. This is how much goes to emergency services, and apparently the Soldiers Relief Fund and school boards and everything else. Okay. I like to show that because people I don't think really grasp sometimes how much it is. Also, Walla Walla, that's not a bad price, $2,600 a month. That's not terrible. We'll do one in Hillsborough in a second, and you can kind of see where Hillsborough sits. And just kind of go from there. St. Helens, Scappoose actually has pretty high property taxes. And the reason for that is because there's not as many people there, and you still have to provide a bunch of services, okay? So clearly Hillsborough, there's gonna be a lot bigger services. There's gonna be a lot more stuff. There's a lot more people to spread the wealth around too. So the property taxes aren't as bad as they are, say, in Scappoose. But yeah, so when I do this problem, what I'm really gonna have you do is a little follow-up, okay? Because in reality, on this problem here, you have, what do we say? We only have 978 to actually buy a house with, okay? Which means I'm going to go back and redo that first problem, and I could have done it on the other page. I'm just going to start over here. And I'm just going to put in 980, I think, just because that's safe. And the idea then is, well, I need to know a better how much I can afford. Clearly, it isn't as much as I thought it was because of taxes. Oh, you hippie. Oh, not A1, you goob. Sorry. By the way, what I just did right there, it's called circular reasoning. All right. You need to find the answer to this question depends on what's in the cell. Wrong. Remember that when we get to logic later on. Okay. That's one I did on accident just then. Once in a while, I'll do that. The computer doesn't like it. I don't like it. But it's me being illogical, me asking the computer to do something it cannot do. And it's called circular reasoning. So I can now afford 198. I can afford to borrow 198. I can afford to buy 228. Okay. And so now if I go on Zillow, and put in, excuse me, if I go into Zillow now and put in 228 as my top end, oh, what are you doing? Why do you hate me? All right, let's get rid of that. There you go. And let's put this to 228. Some people might go, let's put it at 225. It doesn't really make a whole whale of a difference. Oh, that's a million, dummy. That would make a difference. There you go. Cool. And so if I'm just going to thumb through and find one I like the looks of, oh, this place again. Yeah, let's go this place. Chestnut's a nice part of town. Sweet. All right. And then once again, Now, here's a situation. Oh, there's price and tax history right there. There we go. Now, Zillow has a back door into all these assessors' offices. So you'll look, the answer is the same. That's because they are tied to that, and it's pretty nice. Oh, look at that. Well, that's hot. $1,341 is all I owe in taxes on this baby. $1,341. That is amazing. So over here, can I afford this house? Yeah, easily. And maybe, come on, where's my computer? Give it to me. What is your problem? There we go. Okay, so if I did this house, right, and it was 219, 99, I think, right? So how much would you be borrowing? Would you be equals this minus 30,000? You'd be borrowing $189,000. This no longer means anything, okay? You'd be borrowing $189,000. But what would be different is the payment. Now, it would be awfully close to that because it was awfully close to my maximum that I said I could afford to buy. There we go. So $939. Okay, $939, and I think it was $1,320. I think in taxes. I think that's right. Not that huge of a deal. I think it's 50. I don't remember. But in essence, you'd be paying an extra $112 in property taxes. So combined out of pocket every month for your living expenses, you'd be paying $1,052, which is, as you can see, quite a bit less than our amount that we needed to pay, which was $1,200, right? That's the most we said we could pay. And so just be aware of that. That's what we're going to be looking at, talking about this, seeing can I afford it, can I not afford it. That's a big deal to me. Okay. Now, again, if you were out of pocket $1,000 or $1,050 or something on that house, I think per month, including taxes, if you wanted to pay the extra $150 toward the principal, you knock yourself out. Go for it. If you don't, that's cool too. I would say this: if you've never purchased a house before, some people go, they think, oh, so the bank gets my property tax. No. The bank does not get your property tax. Now, the county gets your property tax. Now, in the lines of who gets dibs on your house if you fail to pay, county always gets dibs on the bank. Okay, so if you fail to pay your property taxes, the county will take your house away and foreclose on it. Okay, and the bank will not be happy about that. So what the bank does, until you have enough equity in your home, until there's enough equity in your home, what the bank typically does is they will make you pay that property tax to them. They will then turn around and make sure the county gets paid because they don't want to lose their house. Because again, they're second in line when it comes in the pecking order. Okay, so up until you get a certain amount of equity in your home, which is usually about 20%, then at that point the bank goes, hey, you're into this home. This is your home too. You own a good share of this home, so we're going to go ahead and let you pay your property taxes by yourself. Okay, we're going to do an example here in. I'll do an example here in a second in Oregon. Oregon, I know their tax law is a little bit better. And so as a result, what I want you to see is that if you pay early by a certain time, it's in November. If you pay in full by November or whatever it is, second or third week of November, you can take a pretty good sized discount. You can bet the bank is doing that. Okay, if they're getting your money and then paying it down, that's great. If you don't have the money, you can pay it in installments, in thirds. Typically, is how it's done. Okay, and that's going to cost you the full amount of your property tax. If you pay it early, you give the county their money early, then you get a discount, saves you some money on the deal. Okay, but again, that's up until you have a certain equity in your home. The bank's going to make sure that you are paying your property taxes. They're going to do that by making sure that you give them the property tax, and they'll make sure that it gets to the county. Okay. Understand that tax money does not go toward paying off your home. You still are paying $900, whatever we said it was, a month on this house to the bank, and that's what's going to actually paying the loan down. Okay, so kind of keep that in the back of your mind. When we start talking about what was the total cost of this home, it's going to be 30 times whatever we said the payment was. Let me look that up. It was 30 times 939 plus the 30,000. That's our total price of this home. And again, that's in the other videos as well. So I don't want that to be some weird deal or anything like that. Don't get upset or weirded out by that. That's how the total cost of the house is. But Jay, I paid $112 a month for 30 years. You did. but that's not really the cost of the home. That's property taxes. And by the way, it's not going to be $112 a month, because in a few years it's going to go up, and that's how life goes. It's always going to go up. Things appreciate in value. And so as your house gets more valuable, it's going to be the assessed rate, the assessed value is going to continue to climb a little bit every year. Not a ton, but the assessed rate does go up depending on where you live. Some places it really goes up fast. In other parts of the world, it doesn't go up that fast. And it stays, you know, at a decent rate, or it climbs, but not as much. And certainly not as much as the actual market value of houses increases. Okay. So we're going to do another one here. And on this one here, what I want to see is talk about a little bit more, and we'll do one for an Oregon home, and we're going to look a little bit more at the property tax statement going forward here. Come on, let me in. There we go. Okay, so if we do another one of these, just kind of run through it start to finish. Okay, so you have $25,000 for a down payment, and you can afford I don't know, $1,000 a month. Cool. And I should make that bigger because I want to do Hillsborough. Let's do $1,300 a month. 4.5%, 30 years. Excuse me, obviously the future value is 0. The question is, how much house can we afford? Okay, so in this situation again, all right, 1045 and 1,300 and nice. So equals PV.
We can't see the Excel sheet.
Oh, darn it.
No worries.
You can't see that? What happened?
We can just see the whiteboard.
Weird. All right. Oh, I bet I didn't share the screen. Oh, there we go. I think I shared just the whiteboard. That's stupid. All right, shared whole screen. So interest. Notice I spelled it wrong. Excel doesn't care. It just wants to know what it wants to know whatever I named it. So it doesn't really care how I spelled it. Oops, almost screwed that up again. Okay. So I can afford a $256,000 loan, which means I can afford $25,000 more than that because I already have $25,000 saved up. So I could afford a $281,000 home. Now, if I go onto Zillow and go to Hillsborough, Oregon. There we go. And what did I say, 280 something? 281. So Hillsborough, you don't really have to cap the bottom end because, you know, there's not a lot of bottom end out there. Done. Boom. And there's like 4 houses left. Cool. All right. What I don't want to do is we're going to steer clear of things like townhouses. We're going to steer clear of homeowners association stuff. I want it to be stuff that's a little easier and a little more obvious for tax purposes. Yeah, this little place here. Yeah, that's nice, I guess. Sure. Okay, come on, Betsy. I don't recall asking to see the map there. Oh, anyway, here it is. All right, and if I look at it here, my price and tax history on this place is $1,600 a year. Now that's pretty low for Hillsborough. It's not terrible, but it's not real high. Some of these houses you'll see are a little higher than that one. See if I can find another one that's a little nicer. Maybe I can't find one that's nicer. Let's try this one maybe. Oops, property tax value. Oh, one more thing I would like to see. Yeah, this one, no taxes available. So that will happen once in a while, in which case I'll tell you how you get to the Washington County website in just a few minutes, and we'll look at that. I think I'm going to go back to the other one. This one here, we'll go to this one. So this place here. So if I bought this house for $235, can I afford it? And the end. Wow, that thing is sluggish. $235, can I afford $235,000 for purchase price? Of course I can. Purchase price. Nice. And so, of course, that means I'm going to have to borrow this minus $25,000 from a down payment. And if I borrow $210, notice that this payment, it was just my original payment. I need to come in here and go, what is the payment going to be now if I buy this house? And so $1,064 a month. Can I afford that? I think so. What did I say? Oh, I could afford $1,300. So yeah, I'm good. And on this house, the tax was, where is it? No, the tax was $1,656. Come on, why are you so sluggish? $1,656 a year. Okay, so equals $1,656 per year. So that's about $138 a month. So the question is, can I afford this house? Yes, I think I can. I can afford to have about a $1,200 a month payment, which means I have an extra $98, you see, to fool around with and to pay extra per month or whatever I need to use it for. Okay, that's my money. But I can clearly afford this house because I set a budget for myself of $1,300 a year. A month. $1,300 a month for my total house payment, and that would have to include. Why are you doing that? That would have to include Washington County Assessor. There we go. That would have to include the taxes. Okay. So I almost always go, when I do these things, I go to, I use the same one every time. I like to use, as I said, I usually like to show Hillsborough. So I use Washington County's website. Multnomah County is a gross website. The last 2 times I've been on it, which was this last year, at some point I was on there, awful to run, just not good. Washington County is nice. Columbia County is nice. Walla Walla County, I hadn't been on it in a long time. That one's obviously really nice. I don't really care where you go. If you, for this project, want to do something back in, let's say your grandma lives in North Dakota, knock yourself out. I just don't care. It would not hurt my feelings in any way. No results were found. Maple Street. Wasn't it Maple Street? 433. I'm just going to put Maple. Maple. Okay. Sometimes when you get too specific, it doesn't like it. So 433 Southwest Maple. Here it is. Nice. And again, as promised, if you pay your statement in full by November 15th, you can take a $50 discount off of it. Okay, that's nice. Otherwise, you're going to pay it in, if you pay 2/3 up front, and then you can take this discount off. Or if you just pay 1/3, then you don't get any discount. You just pay it in shares, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Okay. This is what this house is paying for currently. They're paying for the community college. So there's 2 different community college things on here. Typically, see that one? I thought I saw another one. Well, maybe not. The regional ESD, the school district. Those are all your educational taxes, and then here's for everything that's in Washington County that you finance. And these are bonds for for PCC, for Hillsborough, for Washington County, for all these things. These are different bonds. That's what all it goes through paying for. So every time they put something on the ballot and says it's going to cost this much per 1,000 of assessed value. So the assessed value right now, this house is $96,000. So if they said to you, hey, we're going to charge you $1 per assessed value, or so 96,000, this is the assessed value, not the market value. If they're going to charge you $1 per 1,000 of assessed value, well, you've got 96,000 divided by 1,000. You've got 96 assessed values, right? 96,000 of assessed values. So what I'm going to say is, if I'm charging you, let's say the bond says where it's going to be $1.49 per thousand, then that bond is going to cost you $143 a year to pay it off. Okay, whether it's a bond, whether it's school taxes, whatever it happens to be. So I think it pays to be a smart consumer when you're voting on these things. Look up what they're going to charge you. Okay, is it going to be $2.50 per thousand of assessed value? That's how you figure out what that amount would be when you vote for it. I think that's just kind of another nice thing. I know that when we went to buy our house, the first house we bought, I was like, I knew there's property taxes. I did not know how much they were going to be, and it was somewhat of a shock, honestly, to think about it in that regard. Okay, and to realize, and then to really actually break it into exactly what this is all going to. Now, back over here to this. Okay, notice that, keep an eye on those guys for a second, and I'm going to go into Columbia County Assessor Property Search. There we go. I think this is the one I want. Property and tax data reports. Yep. Let's do tax year 29. Oh no. Here, go back. Oh, here, this is the one I want. Property record. Sometimes it pays to look for from the Google research. It pays to look at that a little better than it does to go into some of these websites. Oh, here we go. So situs address. Why do they use Latin? I don't know. No one asked me, I guess. So if you go to Scappoose, let's see here. Street name, Meadow, street, house number. So this is my old neighbors.
Can't see your screen again.
Oh, damn it. Why? Thank you. Okay, that's my old neighbor's house. Oh, what? Oh, you cleared it, you jackass. All right, one moment, please. Scappoose. There we go. And you will see that here's his statement. And in Scappoose, for this house, look what they're paying for the things they're paying for compared to what Hillsborough was paying. Okay. Now, similar size. This house is similar size-wise. It's probably a slight bit nicer than maybe the one we looked at over there, but it's basically double. It's a little over double what the property tax was in Hillsborough. And why is that so much? Well, they're paying $1,100 a year to the school district. Okay, that's crazy. And by the way, that's not for these are the bonds down here is $300 something. That's for the building projects they're doing. This is for to run the school district. Okay, and then all these other things, right? That free library card you like so much, Scappoose Library right there. It's $56 a year. Okay, and so think about these things as you're going along, and then down here you can see how much they save if you pay early, and go on and go on. So it's kind of a neat deal, just I guess to be a little bit more in tune to what you're paying. Different parts of the world obviously charge a lot more in taxes. Again, Scappoose, fairly nice little town, but it's little. And so when you start talking about the number of people that are on the tax rolls that have to cover all of that expenses, then by definition, it's going to be more per person than say in Hillsborough. It's kind of how things go in that regard. But it's kind of mind opening, I think, to look at that. And then kind of see where it shakes out. Obviously, we do different taxes in Oregon versus in Washington. Washington does sales tax and property tax. Here we're property tax and income tax. Idaho actually has all three, but then it's kind of cool how they're just a little different the way it's structured. It's kind of cool in a different way. But different people come with different ideas of how to do things. So just be aware of that. On your financial project, which is what you're going to be doing coming up pretty soon. As I say, I think it comes live this week. The idea is this: if you own a home, and I'm going to bring up that if you haven't, I'm going to bring it up right now. So hang on, we'll go through that part of it together, and kind of walk through it here. Oh, I guess I was logged in. Come on. So on my projects, all my projects, I'm very specific in terms of how I want them done, but they're very much open-ended. Okay, so I don't need to be telling you every little last thing to do, but what I do want you to do is to be following the same procedures. Okay, so the procedures will be the same, but you'll have wildly different numbers than I do because you'll do different things. Okay, so financial math, financial project. Let's look at it here. Oh, what am I doing? Well, I don't want to look at this edit. Just a minute. Edit assignment. That's what I wanted. All right. So I'm on the back end. You can't see this part, but this is what you will see is this document when you open it up. Maybe. There we go. And on this document, you're going to come up with 5 what ifs, I call them. Okay. So the whole idea of this is to do a lot of different what ifs. What if I did this on my house? What if I did this? What if I did that? What if I did this? The whole point of that is to not make up problems. The idea is to, what can I learn from this? Okay. So if you own your own home, I think that you should use your own home for this project. Okay. And the reason for that is because I really want you to have something to take away from this class. If you do this and you like realize that, hey, listen, if I were to pay an extra $200 a month, I could save, $40,000 in the next 10 years to pay this house off, whatever. Hey, go for it. That's amazing. That's what I want you to be able to take away from this. 2 different times I've had people in this class who've come back. Well, I've had many times of people come back to me and said, I learned a lot from doing this and whatever. But 2 times really stick with me. This one lady who owned her own little boutique store, and her husband was this financial analyst guy, and I'd met him once. And she's a talker, so she's the person that tells you about her life, and that's cool. She came back and she goes, Jay, you'll never guess what. I was doing this whole thing. I was discussing with my husband about it, and after I got done, I said, you know what we should do? We should refinance our house. And he goes, we could save a ton of money. And so she says, and he said, yeah, I know. That's why we refinanced 6 months ago. And she's like, we did? Like, yeah, remember we met down at the bank to sign the paperwork? And she goes, yeah. Oh, I didn't remember that. And it was a funny thing to have that conversation where she I guess finally realized that was a big deal and whatever. And then another one, this lady, and she was really funny to have in class. She's super funny, but she looked like Oprah, and she had Oprah's exact personality. And her personality just dominated the room. It didn't matter if I was in charge talking or whatever. Her personality was just great. But one day she comes in and she's like, I did my whole project and I sat my husband down and I lectured him for 2 hours about what we're going to do. And I'm like, I'm sorry. It's supposed to have a good conversation, with your significant other. That's cool. But just have some fun with it. And a lot of people have said to me, yeah, this is interesting. I never thought about trying this. That's what I want you to know when you're done. Now, I will say this. I kind of view myself as a doctor or something. Like once you've seen one, you've seen them all. I don't look at the numbers. I really don't care that much. So if you feel the need to, you want to hide them, shade them, tweak them a little bit, that's fine. But it doesn't really matter to me because they're just numbers at some point. The reason I think it'd be better if it's your numbers is because if it's your numbers, then it makes sense to you and it make more of an impact on your life. Now, if you did, you clearly have already bought a house. Okay, so let's say 5 years ago you bought this house and you put this much down and you borrowed this much and it's this much per month. That's your first starting thing. And then you're going to do 5 what ifs. So for instance, what if we paid extra for the extra $200 a month for the rest of the loan? I don't know. What if we refinanced right now? Okay, what if? I don't know. Find out. And so on and so on and so on. You're going to do 5 of those what ifs. Okay, when you're all done, what I want to know is, what did you learn? Okay, would you have any aha moments? Like, if I had done this, or maybe you'd have said this, maybe you didn't put anything down initially. Okay, you got a full 100% loan and you didn't put any down payment down. And then you went back and you compared, listen, what would have happened if I'd have put 20 grand down? Okay, well, if I'd have put 20 grand down, then I would have saved this much, or I would have had a smaller payment or whatever. Those are the kind of things I want, okay, you to be learning from. I do not want you to have, I don't want you to riff on down payments. Like, what if I put 40 down? What if I put 50 down? No. Like, you can change the down payment one time. That's probably sufficient. Okay. try to be a little bit creative with it. Obviously, the only the real things that we can do is change the down payment, pay extra, and refinance. Those are our big three things that you can do alone. But go through the motions of what if I did this? What if I did this? What if I did this? If you're into a loan for about, let's say you're already 10 years into this loan, you're like, what if I refinanced at 15 years versus at 30 years? All right. And maybe if you tried that, you're like, I still owe too much. And so the monthly payment would have to be way too big to finish in 15 years. But if I refinanced at 30 years, I could, and I would save this much money. Okay. That's the kind of thing I want you to do. Again, if you own your own home. If you don't own your own home, then I want you to decide what you can afford for rent. Okay. And probably, or for payment, which is probably what your rent is, probably. If you live with your parents, it's a little tricky, but like you could talk to your parents and go, hey, what would be an interesting, monthly payment or whatever, for a young kid or whatever. You could get some ideas of that. I can help you as well if you need to. And then let's say that you come up with, $1,000 is what you can afford. Well, then you're probably not going to live in Beaverton, Hillsborough area. Okay. But you could move somewhere out, further out, like say go live in Tillamook or whatever and go and do it from there. But then what I want you to do is exactly what we just did. So go into Excel, okay, knowing what you can afford per month, what the interest rates is, call several banks, look them up online, whatever. And then based on those values, okay, then this is how much house I can afford. And then run through the spreadsheet, just like I showed you, go on Zillow. Cool, here's a house. And I'd like it to be as close to your total amount as you possibly can be, because I'd like it to be a situation where, yeah, I cannot afford this house. Or I want it to be a situation where I can't afford this house because of the taxes. And then what I want you to do is go, well, listen, a house in this town is going to cost me, let's say $200 a month in property tax. I'm going to take that off of what I said I can afford. So instead of 1,000, maybe I can only afford $800 a month, and then retool from there, and then go find a house that you can afford. Okay, that'll be your first step. That whole thing is one first step. And then after that, I need 4 more from you, 4 more what ifs, okay? Because your first deal is actually buying the home. The person already has a home, they clearly already own the thing, they've already done step 1 in that regard. So now they have 5 what ifs. But if you don't own a home, 4 what ifs after you find out how much you can afford, find a house on Zillow, realize that you can't afford it based on property taxes, and then retool like I showed you in class today, and then go find one you can afford. Okay. Again, Zillow has back doors into all assessors, all the assessors' offices around the country. You might find 1 or 2 where it's not listed for whatever reason. And in that case, you can go to the website, the assessor's website for the county and find it. Once in a while, again, for whatever reason, something's gonna be screwy. If it's like a brand new house and it was a lot last year, the taxes won't be right, because obviously the property tax on a lot is way cheaper than the property tax on a house. And so keep that in the back of your mind while you're doing them. For the purpose of this class, I'd like you to use one that actually has a real property tax amount. You aren't going to learn anything. It was $150 property tax all last year. Well, maybe if it was an empty lot, but this year it's got a house on it that's worth, however many thousands of dollars. The property tax of this year is going to be, and from going forward, is going to be huge. So I'd prefer you find one that has a real property tax value in it. And if you can't find a property tax value for that one, go find a house that you can, because again, you're not actually buying this house. This is just for fun, for learning experience. Okay. And don't obsess about it. I know how easy it is to get lost in Zillow. I really like that thing. I could spend hours on it looking at houses. That's not the point of this. The point is to find one that's the right numbers for you for this project, and then go from there. Okay. So I guess it goes in live at noon today. Thanks, Jeremy. And again, you can start thinking about it. All right. Start thinking about it, but you don't have to get going on it right away. In fact, if it was me, I would make sure I got the loan worksheet done first, get some feedback on the loan worksheet. Once you understand that and you feel confident in it, then move on into, I think you've got 3 weeks until it's due, to work on to that, to the financial project. A couple things. In the past, I've kind of let it be open. That was like the first year I did this. That was a bad mistake on my part. So I want it to be a house, and I want you to riff on that house. All right. Don't go buy this house versus that house. That's not what I want. I want you to riff on one house, one loan, and then go from there. Not cars. I don't really care what your interest rate is on a car. On a 5-year loan, you're not paying much interest, period. I don't care if it's a 10-year, I don't care if it's 10% interest or 0% interest. You're not paying much interest on a 5-year loan, okay? On a 30-year loan, it matters a ton what the interest is, and it matters a ton because of 30 years. If it's just a 10-year, that's a 5-year loan, yeah. Someone's like, well, first of all, you can't refinance. Well, you really can't refinance a car loan, but let's say you could refinance a car loan and you dropped it 2%, you're going to save a few bucks, like maybe $100 total off the life of the loan. It's ridiculously little, but that's because you had a very little loan payment, a little loan amount for a very short amount of time. Okay, and so it does not make a big deal. You're buying a house, you're borrowing several $100,000 worth of money for 30 years. I don't really care what your interest rate is. It's a lot of interest. Okay, now clearly dropping down from 7% to 6% is going to save you a ton of money, or from 5% to 4% is going to save you a ton of money. Okay, but it's not because of it's not as much because of the initial amount or whatever. It's not because of the interest rate so much. It's because of how much you borrowed and for how much you had it borrowed for. So that's why I stay away from car loans. I mean, you can do the same principles we did for car loans. How much car can I afford? I can afford $200 a month for a payment. I can get this car loan amount. I can do this for 5 years. Boom. This is how much car I can afford. Sweet. Go do it. Ooh, there's this car. I have 10,000 down payment. I'm going to borrow the rest. This is what my monthly payment would be. Oh, okay. Do it. But again, that it's such a small little thing. I don't want to do that for the project. One more little just disclaimer here on Zillow, and it's true for all of them. And then I've lost my Zillow. Oh, dang it. All right, here's Zillow. I'll go back to this one here real quick. When you click on this house or any house, give it to me. Let's go. What you'll see right here is this piece of crap out of the way. You'll see this estimated payment. Please ignore that. Just ignore that. What does it mean? Yeah, nobody knows. I don't really know where it comes from, because somehow somebody in the background has decided that somehow we have some interest rate and some this and some that. We don't really know what that means. I mean, honestly. So you're not going to use this payment. Okay. That's, I guess, for the general home buying, customer, whatever. That's not what you're going to be using. You are going to be using your actual payments. So be careful of that when you're using that, or just be aware of it anyways. Several people over the years have come up with some weird, I'm like, where'd that payment come from? And then finally someone pointed out, oh, they got it right off the Zillow. So that's maybe helpful-ish. It's going to be way overshooting what it actually is as a general rule. But it's going to depend on how much down payment you used, what interest rate you got. All these different things is what's going to depend on. Okay. Also, no student loans. Those are weird, different breeds of cats. So we're not going to use those. Clearly, you get charged interest, and there's all these different things, though, whether you're working or not, and what you're making for a salary or not, and all these other things. So we're not going to use those. We're going to stick strictly with houses for this case. Okay. Any questions on the homework? Anything you want to see, or any questions? Or yes, Paul, hit me.
Okay. So what about closing costs? Now, we did that thing about rolling closing costs. Do we just ignore that for the time being when we're doing this project?
Yeah, for the financial project, let's just go ahead and ignore that.
Okay. And then, okay, we'll ignore that. So then the other one is, when you're changing your payment and your payment's getting paid down sooner, and we're starting our new equations, do we start that where the last payment is, or where it goes negative when we're throwing that on there? Let's say it's like, last payment $720, you put in $1,000. Do we start that on the next month, or do we do it on the line? Are you following me? The line where our last payment.
If it's okay, so for the purposes of this class, I usually use the one that's closest to zero. So if let's say it was $200 positive or negative 700, I'd probably use the 200 because it's closer to zero.
Perfect. Okay.
For the purposes of this class, I'm not an accountant. I don't even pretend to be one. I washed out of accounting because I'm just not a nitpicky person. So for the purposes of this class, it's about how much money will you save. That's always my answers will be. Okay. So my questions always be worded about how much will you save.
So
And
the one close.
so whether you're within a $3 or $5 or even $1,000, right, on that last payment, whatever, it doesn't matter. You saved 40 grand or 30 grand or whatever,
Okay.
plus or minus a few $100.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Thanks.
Yep. Anybody else? Questions? Comments?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Rochelle. If we're using a house that we own and property taxes go up, do we need to worry about that?
No, that's not a huge deal. If you're using your own home, then the property tax is not a big deal for me
Okay.
in this case,
Okay.
because you've already bought the house, so you've already figured that in that you can afford your property tax. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the past.
Okay. So just use like the beginning property tax amount and just leave it at that kind of
Yeah,
thing?
I wouldn't
Okay.
even, for people that own your own houses, don't even worry about your property taxes for this. Okay.
Okay.
The only reason I bring that up is, well, two reasons. I want people who are going to buy a house to realize that's a cost that you don't think about necessarily. Okay. It's there, but you don't really think about when you go buy a house. You're like, I can afford it. No, you can't, because you got to come up with the property tax stuff. Number one. And then number two, I want people to realize, even if they own a home, a little bit more in terms of where that all goes from, right? Where all that money goes to, and I think when you get that statement in the mail, you're like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. Oh, geez, that's a lot. And then you pay your check and life goes on. Or maybe, especially if you don't own 20% equity in your home yet, you're paying that money to the bank. And so it's just one more check. It's going out of your account every month, and I don't know where it's going to. And so I think it's kind of nice sometimes to kind of from a not political standpoint, but like the understanding what's going on in our system and where we are as voters, as citizens, like where is this money coming from? And how do we get to such a giant property tax? Because every year there's things that come up that we have to pay for, whether that's schools, whether that's the fire department, whatever it is. And a lot of times people just vote on them. They're like, well, okay, we need that. And for some things, yeah, I pretty much always vote yes on the police and the fire department, because it's kind of a big deal in my mind. There's other things that I, as a consumer, go, I bet they could do with less. And as a teacher, I almost never vote yes on the bonds, but for our district, why? Because I often know, because I've been intimately involved in a lot of this stuff. I'm like, dude, the last bond they passed was great, and it was actually for exactly what they needed and not much more. And I was like, wow, well, way to go, way to be on the ball. But years ago, they were all these ginormous stuff, and I'm like, why are you doing that? They're gonna build this goofy thing or build that. I'm like, okay, listen, we need to build a new grade school because the other one's literally falling down. Okay, I got that. That's great. Let's build that. But some of the other stuff, what are you doing? And they're like asking for all these ridiculous things. I'm like, no, I'm not going to vote for that. And because why? Because I know that I feel like it's a waste in my mind, but I knew my property tax is going to be sky high. And I'm like, no, I don't like that. And so I don't know. That's kind of things that I don't think a lot of us realize. You read through the thing, you're like, oh yeah, it's going to be this much per thousand of assessed value. I'm not sure what that means. Don't really care. I guess I'm going to vote yes, whatever. And that's just something else I want people to kind of realize, I guess, in terms of, is it a financial thing that we do, and be a little more aware of it, I guess. So that's why I bring it up. Yeah. Other questions? Any more? I don't see anything. All right. Next Saturday, next week I'm going on vacation, and I'm going to try next Saturday. I'm going to try to be somewhere where I have internet access, where I can do this online from where I'm at. I'm going to try really hard. And I think that's going to be doable, because I think Saturday's on the day I'm coming home. So I should be able to find somewhere where I can live stream from the road. That's my plan. I will have email access spotty through the week, and I'll be checking my emails when I get there. And I will let you know Friday for sure if there's any changes to Saturday's meeting. There shouldn't be. I should be fine to stream from wherever I'm streaming from. I'll probably only have the little tablet next week. But yeah. So I'll try to still check emails probably every other day this next week. But where I'm going to be, I don't think there's going to be that great of internet service. So God's country, in other words, get away from the world. So that's kind of the plan this week. And but I guess, like I say, I'll try my hardest to be somewhere on Saturday to be able to live stream. And so that's the day I'm coming home. So it shouldn't be too hard to pull that off. So if there's any changes, I'll let you know. Okay. Anything else? No. All right. Well, have a great week, and we'll see you later.
Thank you.
Mhm.